Blaze media editor at large and the Blaze TV host of Zero Hour. He is also the founder and editor or editorial director of Return, which is a new vertical on theblaze.com. We have several different things that we're working on, and one of them is Return. Just like on your keyboard when you hit Return, it's all about tech. He wrote a story that is one of the more disturbing dystopian stories, and we've done our homework on this to some degree, enough to go, oh no, this is actually in practice and being used by the University of Michigan right now. This is not some, someday. And it's a little bit like the Matrix. Environmentalists are worried about how do we make enough power to be able to power AI. Well, they have found a way called organoids. Wait until you hear this. James is with us now. Hello, James.
Hey, Glenn. How are you?
Well, that's better before I read your story on organoids. Yeah, I know. This is bizarre and terrifying.
Yeah, it's really disturbing. And it's been around for a little while, but it's really starting to kick into gear. As you said, AI consumes a ton of electricity, a lot of energy. Environmentalists have always hated nuclear power for pretty perverse reasons, I think. And so they're so afraid of using nuclear power that what's in vogue now is turning to us to be the batteries. Just take those stem cells out of embryos or out of the lab, sometimes even out of tumors, turn them into brain cells, basically, and use those as batteries to power what they're calling bioprocessors. They say it'll use about 1 million times less power than a typical digital processor, and that's a good thing, they say. You can access them remotely. And this is the new hype. It's from the same folks who brought you the idea of going to net zero carbon use. They look at human beings as a waste of space, a waste of energy, and they want to harness that to run AI that's supposed to be smarter than anyone can understand.
So on Final Spark's website, this is the company that's doing this, they link to a Daily Mail article that says organoids are tiny, self-organized, three-dimensional tissue cultures made from stem cells. Stanford's website says stem cells come from two sources, embryonic stem cells, and then that's unused embryos, and they are then donated to science, or adult stem cells, but those are really limited and can only generate certain types of cells. So they also say, Final Spark's website says, these organoids live for about 100 days. So are we harvesting embryos, using them to power a supercomputer for 100 days, and then killing them and looking for more embryo stem cells?
Well, right. So, if you're uncomfortable with IFV, this stuff is going to drive you nuts. There's an extra category of stem cells that they've created called induced pluripotent cells. And basically what you do is you start the embryonic process, but you arrest it before it gets too far, and then you harvest the stem cells out of this artificially induced embryonic organism, right, human organism, and then you create a fork and you just grow those cells, sort of in the way that they grow fake meat cells. It's really akin to cancerous cells in the way that they grow. Right, so this is something that, it's not one and done. It's not like, well, maybe once upon a time there was an embryo who had to die for the greater good. No, this is like a perpetual motion machine. You got to keep harvesting.
Yeah, every 100 days. Right. This is not a hypothetical, by the way. Final Spark says the University of Michigan already using this neuro platform. And this is because there's not enough energy, and these organoids use so much less energy that if we just harvest these embryos, we can then AI can go on and live forever, and we don't have energy problems. Good Lord, that's terrifying.
Yeah, I mean, at a certain point, you got to ask, if we were created in the image of God, how far can you stray from that? before something really horrible happens. None of this is a surprise. I mean, Nikola Tesla, back when he was alive, infamously said, "You will live to see man-made horrors beyond your comprehension," and we're getting pretty close.
Yeah, you now have scientists who don't necessarily believe in God, think that they are creating a God in AI, now harvesting God's creation to power their new God. Good Lord, help us.
Yeah, and if you cross that Rubicon where you say, okay, we're going to turn these brain cells into cyborgs, into Frankenstein cells, then it's not very long before you say, like, well, gosh, why don't we just turn the whole human race into this kind of cyborg entity? You know, the Terminator, at least the machines are stomping around looking to wipe us out. These machines are going to look at us more as the solution than the problem, because they just suck all their energy out of us.
You know, I was reading a book about energy and how all this is going, and it will. I mean, if it's an entity that needs food, needs energy to live, just like us, you're trapped in the mountains, in a snowstorm, and there's 20 of you, and you start dying, you're going to start eating each other. It's just, you have to survive, and that is what happens. The same thing. It will eat whatever will give it the energy. I'd rather not train it to eat people or anything to do with people.
Well, especially when you got nuclear power there. And, you know, to their credit, there are some tech guys out there who are working on advanced forms of nuclear power, clean energy coming out of things that you can do, splitting up atoms and the like. Yeah, there are risks there, but gosh, I mean, if we're going to go down this road to any degree where we're going to need significantly more energy in order to, whether it's stay ahead of China or whatever excuse you want to come up with, or just, for the sake of more human flourishing, imagine that. Gosh, you gotta take a look at nuclear before you start looking at the guy sitting next to you as your source of energy.
I saw a story yesterday about here in Idaho that they're shutting down the water because of environmental reasons. They're shutting down the water for, I don't even remember, 500,000 acres or more of farmland here. They're just going to shut the water off. So all these farmers are going to lose their farmland. But coincidentally, what is also happening at exactly the same time is they are opening up cobalt mines in Idaho. And these cobalt mines need tons of water to keep the drills cool and everything else. And those are for batteries. So it appears as if the state of Idaho shafted the farmers and said, forget about the food, transfer the water to the cobalt mines so we can have batteries. That's more important. And nobody's tied these two together yet. We're in trouble. We've misplaced our values.
It's a big problem. And you know what else is crazy about Idaho, Glenn, is right now there's some Bitcoin mining going on in Idaho. Now, a lot of people sort of don't understand how Bitcoin works. They're skeptical, but this is something that is still a first-rate technology that ordinary Americans can use starting right now. It takes, maybe a minute or two to learn how to do it, but you can do it. When the Bitcoin miners take the energy that they need in order to do what they do, legislators get upset. Oh, I don't know, this is using a lot of energy. So they're looking at curbing the ability of the miners to use electricity or even charging them more for their electrical use. Meanwhile, when Facebook comes to town in Idaho and they say, hey, we're building a gigantic data center, it's going to consume tons and tons of energy, the legislators say, well, if you're creating jobs, we'll actually give you a tax cut. This is how messed up our priorities are right now.
Wow. I don't know if you saw the godfather of AI, but Jeffrey Hinton. He's the guy who left Google, if I remember right, and he left Google because he said they were going into some unethical things and it was becoming a real danger. Do you remember this story?
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. And he said he had real fear at Google that AI would fall into the hands of bad actors. He just did an interview where he said that he was asked the question here if he was in favor of a superintelligent AI destroying humanity and replacing it with something objectively better in terms of consciousness. He said, I'm actually for it, but I think it'd be wiser for me to say that I'm against it. He was then pressed on and asked him, can you elaborate? He said, well, people don't like being replaced. Well, yeah, no, I'm good. He said it's not clear that we're the best form of intelligence that there is. Obviously, from a person's perspective, everything relates to people. But it may be that there comes a point when we see things like humanist as a racist term. We're dealing with people who are very, very smart and very, very clever, but many of these people are anti-human, and they hide behind the environmentalist thing to get away with it.
It's really diabolical. I mean, if you're looking for an intelligence that's higher than human intelligence, that actually doesn't want to kill us, but in fact loves us with a love beyond human comprehension, it's right there in the form of God the Creator. And if you reject the existence of God, then it's just really looking like these days only a matter of time before you reject the existence of human beings too. I know it's not everyone. I know there's some atheists out there who think that human beings are still good, but it's looking like they're outnumbered and they're losing the battle for the soul of the atheists, if you will. I mean, these tech guys, some of them, they have really just, they do hate humanity, and they think that intelligence is more important than love. They think the brain is more important than the heart. And, it all sounds interesting when it's at the level of theory, but when you ask them to develop it out into practice, it doesn't mean replacing humans. It means wiping them out.
So which movie do you think is more likely? I mean, I never thought The Matrix, but The Matrix, batteries, human batteries, and it creating a utopia in people's minds. Or do you see us, I mean, remember the beginning of Skynet and the Terminator, the first line, I think, in that movie is the machines rose from the ashes in the nuclear fire. And it was AI that had been used by the Pentagon and the world's war machines. And then we blew ourselves up, and AI decided we were the problem and started to wipe us out. Here we are talking about the absolute unthinkable World War III, which would end in nuclear war and wipe almost all life off the planet. And we are giving the keys to much of our work. We just had Jack Carr on yesterday, where he was talking about, he said, nobody would tell me exactly, but if I talk to enough people, they're putting it all together, and you can look at it and go, oh, we're turning the keys over to our killing machines over to AI soon. That's not, that can't be a good thing. Which movie are we going towards? It's kind of like, are we Brave New World or 1984? I think we're 1984. Are we headed more towards the Terminator or the Matrix?
Well, we got lots of sci-fi movies to choose from. I would point toward, we've got sci-fi horror films that we can look at too. We got movies like Event Horizon. We got series like Hellraiser, where the bad guys are interdimensional demons who get summoned by human beings and lead them into hell. We've got, David Cronenberg, Videodrome. He's got other films, that really show you that, there is that side of technology that makes you, sort of fills you with childlike wonder and all these promises of flourishing beyond imagination. Well, there's a dark side too. And if we pretend the dark side isn't there, that's usually the way that we get led astray in the worst possible way.
So is there anything that can be done, going back to the first topic of using stem cells from embryos for human brains into these organoids? Is there anything that we should be looking towards or pushing for or what?
Well, I think number one, we got to ask ourselves some serious questions about how enslaved we're going to be if we are always looking to China. If we look at China and say, they're taking over, we can't beat them unless we join them, or we have to fight fire with fire. If we are constantly comparing ourselves to what the Chinese are doing, we're going to lose touch with who we really are as Americans, and depending on how things shake out, as human beings. That's point one. I think point two is, you want to innovate on energy, look to nuclear. This is not some bizarre new technology. It's been around for a long time. Some countries that, the French, the Japanese, they had Fukushima, but they have tsunamis all the time. Not a problem in most of the United States.
Right.
There are ways of doing plentiful energy that don't involve turning human beings into these sort of Frankenstein cyborgs and using them for energy.
James, thank you so much. Appreciate it. You can read this article on Return at theblaze.com.